Hello and welcome to the Joaquim4gov broadcast on Tuesday, 5th of February 2013, AM edition. So the Reserve Bank seems to be meeting up this afternoon to make a decision on our interest rates, the official cash rate, as it were. A lot of people are talking about them leaving interest rates where they are. Historically, anyone's predictions aren't worth anything because they're all over the place. They're not necessarily correct or incorrect, and the board, as you know, are the people that make the decision on the interest rates. Do you know who's on the board? You might have heard of a couple of the names, or maybe just the head, but you should look into that. That is one of the biggest problems that I have with the Reserve Bank, is that its members, or the members of its board, are members of boards of major corporations in Australia, and that to me is a bit of a rigged market and a bit of insider trading, even, if you will. When they talk about the cash rate, that isn't the guarantee for every transaction that the bank does. That's a target. And historically, you can look back at the target versus the actual, and it used to bounce up and down around the target, and I would imagine at the point where computerized trading came in, it was pretty much dead on the target all the time. But that does not mean that each transaction is at that rate, and it does not mean that you can't have, with computerized trading, enough transactions to average out any shady dealings that you do. So let's say, for example, the company that you're a particular director of or on the board of is going to do, its funding. You can effectively get that money for nothing. And there's no reporting on that. There's no oversight on that. And it's not just that, really. I mean, it shouldn't be controlled by people that benefit directly from it all. It affects directly one way or another. So I think that if you're going to be on the board of the RBA, you can't be serving on the board of any other company. I think that should be pretty obvious. If you have served, it's another story. I mean, we can't wipe it out completely. You want people that are adequately skilled to be there. So that's going to come up, but you can't. Can we at least have a revolving door? I mean, can we at least get that? Can we get it down to that level of corruption? It's the third highway patrol in like 5 minutes. Anyway, fully painted up too. Proper highway patrol. Keep up the good work, guys. So if you're going to be on the board of the Reserve Bank, you can't be on the board of any other companies, and we have to have some sort of financial distancing as well. You can't benefit from the decisions that you make. You can't be connected to the decisions that you make. Not that directly. I mean, they'll have to come down and everything like that. The government is not responsible for the interest rate in no way, shape and form. Over the years, they love claiming credit for it when it goes down or when it's low, and the opposition loves blaming the government when it's going up or it's high. They have nothing to do with it. Well, I guess you could say indirectly their policies can shape the way that the economy runs, but the actual RBA has the authority to change it, as I've just mentioned, by the meeting of the board of generally business marbles. Doesn't have anything to do with the government. And the only power that you really have is the treasurer can direct the head of the board, or they can boot them, or they can appoint them. But that's it. And the direct is asked, by the way. And if there's ever a conflict of interest or a conflict in the decisions or something like that between the board and the treasurer, I won't say that because I don't remember it that well. I'll have to reread it. So check out who's on the board. Go to the RBA website. Check out who's on the board. Check out the history. You can even look at their holdings over the years of what they were doing, and you can go back to the GFC and pre-GFC days and see what sort of transactions were going on there. That's an interesting thing to look at. If you don't understand how that works, the RBA is basically the source of money. They can create it out of nothing. And the fact that they can do that at an interest means that we will perpetually have a declining value of the dollar, because you can't pay back interest with dollar that you owe interest on. So it's always going to be diminishing in value. The banks, as you know, they can choose to do whatever the hell they want to do, and it's up to us as consumers to make them move the right way. The government, they can talk strong, but there's no legislation in place for them to do anything. The whole point of fluctuating the interest rate is to basically change the economy that we get exposed to, the end users, but it goes through a lot of levels before it gets to us, as most homeowners will know, with interest rates on home loans, but that's just one. It affects the value of our dollar as well. The lower the interest rate is, the less our dollar is worth, because it's worth less, you know. If you were to invest in it, you'd be getting less interest. So generally, I would imagine if the interest rate goes down, it means our dollar is cheaper, which means it'll be worth less. If the interest rate goes up, our dollar will become worth more. During the same news piece that I was listening to, you know, they cover the price of gold. And I think that's a good thing to link into this conversation. The value of gold is generally the same. It has the same purchasing power throughout a long time, you know, let's say thousands of years. But the way we measure gold is a bit tricky. It's measured generally in US dollars first, and if the value of gold is generally the same, what you're really looking at is the value of the US dollar in the terms of how much gold you can buy with it at a certain point in time. And then that gets translated into Australian dollars, which it really just means the amount of Australian dollars that it would take to buy the amount of American dollars that you could buy a certain amount of gold for. So, as it moves up and down, it's interesting to look at that with the price of gold and the price of US dollars and Australian dollars together. I believe that if you invest in gold long term, like for retirement or something like that, it's a very good idea. As I mentioned, our dollar is going to forever go down, and any sort of dollar with the same structure that we do, which is most countries, will experience the same thing. Not all countries, but most. And because of the members of the board of the RBA, which is the source of everything, so if you're in the stock market or shares or anything like that, you can't trust the rules of economics because it's not purely economically driven, those decisions. And that applies to the stock market and everything as well. So your money's not really safe anywhere long term if you want to hold the actual value of it, unless you put it in something like gold. I've been doing that pre-GFC. I actually moved my super over to gold just before the GFC, because you can see it coming, you know, and it's done quite well compared to everything else. So there's some advice for you as well. Look into that if you have the means, or at least become knowledgeable on it. On that note, going back to governments and how they always claim credit, one thing that comes to mind is the old Kevin Cash bribe. If you think back and you remember, everyone in Australia got a I don't know, I forget the technical term for it or what the official name of the program was, but everybody basically got what was it, $900 or something like that? And there was some challenges to the constitutionality of that. But the relevant thing is that that move prevented an official technical definition of Australia being in a depression. There was a lot of talk of it in the day, of us being in a recession, depression. Are we going to be? Are we already in? And that little boost was countered, even though it totally shouldn't have been, and it delayed 4 consecutive quarters of economic decline, or whatever the technical definition for it is. And you could do the math and you could see it was by pretty much exactly that. So if he hadn't have done that, it would have counted, basically. And so it's another thing when you talk about, you know, the inflation rate and things like that, all these economic numbers, they report however they want, and they usually include government spending that they create out of nothing and give back to you, and that isn't the economy. That's manipulation and tampering into the economy, and it shouldn't count. So today, what will happen? No one knows. I think ABC was saying 24 out of 28 economists surveyed by Bloomberg reckon that it's going to stay put. Again, we don't know. I think the inflation rate is at 2.2, which is quite low for RBA standards, so who knows, we might see them drop it further so that we increase spending, let's increase inflation. I heard Al Gore talking about our government and carbon tax policies and things like that, and Al Gore should mind his own business. He is making money from his whole climate crusade, ridiculous amounts of money. He's basically bet the farm on it, so he's going to say whatever it takes. I personally do not agree with the view of anthropogenic global warming, which is what it was and what it was claimed, and it was what it was started to be, global warming. You want to kick it down to climate change, you're going back to before the 70s, where there's always an environmental catastrophe that's just about to happen, and so we need more taxes, we need more money, we need more control. That isn't to say that I have no environmentalist views at all. I do believe in, you know, reducing true, actual pollution, not CO2es, which is just a ridiculous statement. I mean, how can you say CO2es? Have you done chemistry? Do you know the composition of the electrons in the valence shell on different elements? You can't just say CO2e, that's ridiculous. But anyway, GMO is a big problem. I think it's a much bigger problem than climate change, genetically modified organisms that wipe out the naturally occurring organisms, plants, food supply basically. Gives rats cancers in 3 generations, makes them sterile, makes them have all sorts of deformities. It's a huge risk, and a company like Monsanto that pushes that globally, they're very predatory in how they do their business, and they've stated that they want to be able to patent food and be the source of food in the world, and it's very dangerous. I try to eat organically, and it's more expensive and it's harder to get a hold of. But by no means am I someone who thinks that we should just pillage the earth whichever way we can. I wouldn't mind getting fluoride taken out of our water as well, or fluorosilicic acid, as it's actually called. What's the other name for it? I think I usually get this one wrong. Hydrofluorosilicic. I don't know. Anyway, that is an industrial waste product that is no good and it's being dumped in our water, and we pay for that. So I filter my water to get rid of that as well. If you are of the belief that it's good for your bones and your teeth, it's the same logic as eating sunscreen for starters, but it's also not calcium fluoride, as you might think, and it's quite bad for you. So look that one up as well. So, I have an opinion that we need to do our own research, and most of the studies that have come out to do with climate change, if you follow the sources of the study and the sources of that study, and they all lead back to the IPCC. So even a local Ghana report or whatever it was, he has sources that source or directly source IPCC reports that have been discredited all over the shop. Whatever your climate science belief is, if the source is the IPCC, it's shonky. Not only have they been caught lying and caught talking about the fact that they are going to purposely lie and systematically wipe out people that don't lie, and the shonky ways that they change the data and they can't model anything. If the problem is so imminent and you can model it to such a detail, why do we not know what we need to do to alleviate it? It's just like terrorism. It's just this ongoing. We have to just cut. We have to just keep cutting forever. To 1980s levels, to whatever levels. So that was all right back then, was it? If we just kept doing that, if we just diminished the amount we did in a past time, that's okay. That's just incrementalism, and it's just another power grab. The age of terrorism has come to an end, or so we're told. We'll see about that. So now we need another perpetual enemy to fight. So why not the environment? So there's lots of studies that have even said that temperature models don't even fit the greenhouse model. So there's a lot of things going on there. The IPCC have said a lot that they will not take the sun into account in their calculations and their theories and their measurements, and nothing like that. The sun, which is the source of the whole problem apparently, and has its own cycles that change over time. Anyway, going back to our Gore, he has lied in his movie, which has been proven in court, which can no longer be shown in schools, or has to be shown with a disclaimer of the lies, and have the lies explained to them. He lives ridiculously extravagantly compared to people, and he's always telling the public that they need to cut down on their consumption and their emission and their pollution and everything like that. He's got seaside properties worth millions of dollars that, if he believes his own rhetoric, the sea will destroy, or at the very least make worth nothing. The guy's a con man, so if you're going to have a hero in the climate movement, you should have another look at him and move on from that. As I said, anthropogenic global warming is what I'm not a subscriber of, because that's specifically what we were talking about back in the day of the Green Paper of the Carbon Emissions Reduction Scheme. So, what do you do? There's a lot of different ways that it's being tackled globally. A carbon tax is one thing, which is a direct tax on the economy. There's a direct correlation between emissions and economic growth. So that's going to be quite a limiter on the economy. And then what do you do with the money? You also need to keep in mind when you talk about alternative energy that it's clean once it's made. It doesn't make it clean. You talk about solar panels and look how they're made, especially in China where there's bugger all regulation and they're really going to town on pollution. So, solar cells need to be made, they need to be shipped, same with wind turbines, they need to be different parts of them, they need to be forged, they need to be put together, they need to be mined for the minerals and things like that in them. And then once they're on your hill or on your roof, then they're clean. So put that into your equation as well. It's not as clean as you might think it to be. And they're constantly upgrading that technology, and I'm not against it. I plan to be putting solar panels on my roof as well, but for the economic benefit more than anything else. Environmentally, I don't think they're that clean. Not yet. We'll see. It's an emerging market. Maybe they'll improve it, but it's pretty damn dirty right now. What else have we talked about? Al Gore, climate change, interest rates, RBA, gold. I saw in the news, was it Chris Pine or someone like that, referenced Nazis talking to someone about something, and then they played the "I'm so offended" card, and they wanted an apology, and the person who said it, they did all right. They said that he had to then apologize, the guy that was offended, for some other remark that he made comparing his government or his party or something like that to Nazi propaganda a couple of years ago, which is a good move. He said he wasn't going to apologize to this, I forget what the word was, it was the first choice of word, fake hate basically. And then he ruins it by saying, if anyone is taking offense to what I said, then obviously I retract that. What does that mean? You've said it. When you retract it, you're removing it from the file in their brain. I hate it how politicians do this. If you're going to say something, stand behind it. This idea that a politician has to say something without offending anyone, 20 million people, no one can be offended, is ridiculous. People, how do you talk to your friends and to people that you know, and to people at work and anything like that? Straight talking. That's what I'll be doing if I get in. If I'm going to say something, I'm going to stand up to it, I'm going to back it. If you're offended, so be it, you're offended. Great. What a wonderful country we live in, that you have the right to be offended, and I have the right to offend you, and we both have the right to complain to each other about it, and that's as far as it goes. Isn't that wonderful? That's how it should be. Alright, let's leave it at that for now. There's, the federal elections, the Parliament has come back, so, I might have a big question time and see what they're up to. It's always fun listening to question time, especially doing it regularly. You really get a flavour for the individuals and their little tactics, and it's just like school. It really is. If everyone in Australia listened to question time, it might actually be worth something. But it's just a show, a wonderful show. Okay. Joaquim4gov, and Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. Give me some comments if you like. If you have something, especially after this one. I've got some mountains friends that might not like what I've said about the environment and climate as a whole, so you might want to get involved and tell me your views. But then, same thing with guns as well too, I guess. Yeah, so I think I got a subscriber on YouTube. That's great. It's good to see it's slowly moving along, but I do foresee myself talking to myself and commenting on the news for a while still, so who knows, eventually I might actually be addressing people in their Twitters and everything. See how it goes. As for last night, I did it without really having much to say, purely because of the fact that I said that I would do it twice a day when I'm driving to and from work. That's it. And the fact that it gave me a bit of fear, a bit of trepidation to begin with to do this means that I have to do it to get over that and to get the experience from it for myself. So even if I have nothing to say, unfortunately I'm going to mumble and ramble into something for at least 5 minutes or so. But this one's this one's long. I've said enough. I'll see you tonight. Bye.